do it.
All right. Well, welcome everybody. Good afternoon. I'm Brad Uhlig, here with my business partner, Jay Peterson, and our guest today, Fleming Schutrumpf. And we are going to talk about how to appeal your property taxes. Let's see, going forward here. Hang on. So again, I'm Brad Uhlig, my business partner, Jay Peterson. We are the owners of Westpeak Properties. Westpeak Properties is a full service real estate brokerage company. We specialize in investment properties, anything ranging from a condo on up to a 12-unit apartment. Our mission is to help you create cash flow and build wealth through investing in real estate. And we can help you find properties, analyze properties, buy them, sell them, flip them, update them if you need help with that, process 1031 exchanges, any of that good stuff that has to do with investing in real estate. And we host these seminars from time to time to help people understand ways to better make money, maximize your profits, help you with property management, things like that. We've been doing this for about 14 years. We have an extensive network of investors, and I would say probably about 20 to 25% of our transactions every year occur off market between investors that we know want to sell something, investors we know want to buy something. So if you have anything to buy or sell, I would say reach out to us. Always a good idea. Let us know what you're thinking, and maybe we can help you with strategy, or maybe we can help you even find a buyer or seller, etc. We don't do property management, but we do work with experienced property management partners. So if you're looking for property management, always happy to help you out with that as well. We have hosted webinars like this in the past. As I mentioned, our last one actually was with Fleming here, because Fleming is a Denver rental property inspection inspector, I should say. And so he's been helping people get their rental properties inspected through Denver, et cetera. And he'll give you his information later on how to reach out to him if you're looking to have that done as well. We've done webinars, et cetera, on cost segregation, using DSTs as an exchange option, property management practices, et cetera. Most of those can be accessed through our website, westpeakproperties.com. So today, again, our guest speaker is Fleming, as we go, Fleming Schutrumpf, How to Appeal Your Property Taxes. Fleming is a real estate investor and an author of 3 books, including one called Protest Your Property Taxes and Win, which is why we have him here with us today. He's been a property investor full-time in the past and has lots of management experience. So I'll let him take over from here and explain to everybody what he does and where he's come from and all of his good expertise. And Fleming, we really appreciate you being with us today.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm really happy to be here, and thanks for having me on the show. And I sold a building with Brad and Jay 2-3 years ago, and it was really a good, really good experience for me. So thank you for helping.
Yep.
I own 40 plus rental units in Metro Denver. And because of that, I've submitted more than 150 assessment protests. And I'm really here. My main vocation right now is being a licensed Denver rental licensing inspector. But I'm here as a public service because I've seen the kind of property tax game feel increasingly unfair, and the assessors increasingly kind of money hungry. And so I want to teach the people listening how to kind of stand up for themselves and create a fair evaluation. But more about me, I do the Denver rental licensing inspections, and I'm really proud to be actually the only investor and the only landlord who does inspections. And I think in a climate in Colorado where landlords are really kind of under siege, I'm proud to be a service to all the investors out there. I've been a licensed real estate agent since 2001, a real estate investor since I was 23. And I've written 3 real estate books on Amazon, including this one, which is about protesting your property taxes. So I think the first slide is, should you protest? And I am not here to like coach people on tax evasion or anything. I really believe that property taxes fund some really essential services, including our schools, fire department, police, things that sometimes we wish we had more of. And so we have a duty as citizens to keep our county and our country a good place to live. But simultaneously, and I think this is becoming increasingly an issue, we have a duty to keep our government honest. And so I actually, in the back of my book, have a little white paper of how I think property tax assessments actually were a big contributor to the 2008 housing crash. And we're seeing a lot of stuff in the legislature about rent controls and things like that. And we see politicians talking about it out of both sides of their mouth. Like, one, they want to double our property tax assessments, but at the same time, they want to exercise rent controls where we can't pass along these huge cost increases. And so what is assessed value and taxes due? It's actually surprisingly confusing. And even I am not a scholar on this. I can help you kind of change the value that affects your taxes, but there's a bunch of stuff there that gets really academic. So the value that you'll be paying next year that you got a notice of valuation for just the last few days is based on the property value from July 1st of 2020 to June 30th of 2022. And that's called the basis period. But they could also next year tax you on the value of your property on January 1st of next year. So if you bought a fire damaged house for $200,000, you fixed it up, and on January 1st, it's worth $500,000, they could tax you on the $500,000. And then the assessor's office, and if you go to their website, they have this very confusing mumbo jumbo. They take your market value, which we just received, and they multiply it by some fraction to give you assessed value. And then at the end of this year, they will create a mill levy, which is they bang their budget against the sum total of assessed properties, which creates the mill levy, which is that multiplier of how many taxes they need to collect. And in Denver County, just for the taxes I just paid recently, it's about $550 for $100,000 of market value. So if I owned a condo, $100,000 market value, it's $550 in tax. And you can just kind of multiply up from there. $1 million house is 5,500. And there's really 3 steps to protest your property tax. And you have to do the first appeal to preserve your right to go further in the process. So on your notice of valuation, it says any appeals have to be received by June 8th. If you haven't appealed by then, you've basically just surrendered your rights to appeal. And when you initially appeal in writing, what I've seen is they'll give you a token reduction just to hope you go away. So I'll appeal my value and say it was $200,000 too high, and they'll like reduce it by $16,000, which saves me like, $30 or something. And they hope that I just kind of leave it there.
Right. It'd be like, I tried. Okay.
That's right.
Yeah.
Fleming, we forgot up front. You're taking questions throughout, right? So
yeah, please.
If anybody has questions while we're going through this, just submit a question through I think it's the chat, right, Jay?
Right. Yeah. And I'll field the questions as we go, and I'll just stop
you
if we get a few questions lined up.
Right.
Yeah, I like it lively, so that's great.
Sure.
And I'll let you know if I have a slide on it, and we'll just go to that when we get to it.
And Fleming, I had a question for you on your previous slide. You mentioned that if you bought a fire damaged house, then you improved it, that they could tax you on that improved value. Does it work the other way around, since June 30th of 2022 was essentially the peak of the market? Mm-hmm. If property values go down, could you make an appeal based on that fact?
I do not believe the system would honor that. Yeah. Okay. It's set up for them, not necessarily for you.
Well, you said keep them honest, so
so once you get that token reduction, I think the right thing to do in just about every case, unless they really like shock you by just acknowledging the truth of your statements and reducing your taxes to where they're fair, there's a second written appeal. So typically that first letter you get with the token appeal has a 30-day deadline for you to submit another appeal, which culminates in a verbal hearing with a supposedly independent appraiser hired by the city or county that you're appealing in. I've seen it be interesting. So I usually research my stuff a little more, submit a better appeal than I did the first time, but often I can just resubmit the same thing. And then sometimes before that hearing, the assessor will call and just offer a stipulation to agree on a certain value reduction. Sometimes it's good enough to just take it, and sometimes it's like, no, I'll see you at the hearing. And then essentially you show up at the hearing, and it's worth knowing if you own multiple properties. In Denver, where I own multiple properties, they've been very kind about letting me do my 16 protests all the same morning. So instead of having to come in 4 times, they'll bulk schedule them. And then
they do them all in person. They do them
yes,
all, not like a webinar like this or Zoom call or anything.
During COVID with Zoom calls, that's a great question. I think it may be more Zoom than it used to be showing up in person. Mm-hmm. They will hear your arguments, they'll hear the assessor's arguments, and then they take about 30 to 45 days to send you a decision. You could still appeal at a third level, which gets pretty technical. Then you could do formal mediation, or I think it's actually binding arbitration, where the arbiter issues a ruling. You have to pay for that. There's the Board of Assessment Appeals, and there's also court. What I found with that, I went to the Board of Assessment Appeals once. They showed up with 3 lawyers and 3 appraisers, and I just got kind of steamrolled. I felt like, it's those legal techniques, like, have you ever lied? And if you say no, you're lying. And if you say yes, then they're like, yeah, clearly your protest is lies too. And they just steamroll you. So unless you really know something about how to appear in those settings, I don't really recommend it. But it's an option that exists. So I've seen a ton of assessment errors, and I think those are the cause of some of us getting really, really high valuations. And there's a lot of them. And I think sometimes they're not human error. They use a Zillow-like engine that just makes up numbers and pretends your house is like some other house when it isn't. They use single-family houses as comps for your condo or row home, because those condos are going to be worth less. If you have multifamily, they might overinflate your unit count. I see this a lot. Comps from a better neighborhood. So I have a place in Lakewood, just off Colfax. The assessor sent me comps on 29th in Edgewater. And I'm surrounded by the kind of rundown multifamilies. And they're like, no, we're using this pristine neighborhood in Edgewater as comps. And so it's our job to just clue them into that. Using, instead of being on a busy road, using a sheltered cul-de-sac comp, because those are worth more. A lot of places have HOA houses, and then maybe across the street there's not an HOA. The houses with an HOA are frequently worth less. In Boulder, they used a comp with an 1.5 acre lot size without adjusting for it, for like an 8,000 square foot lot, that kind of stuff, or having a 2-car garage where you don't have a garage at all. I've also seen comps where literally the comp seemed to be a fraudulent sale. A couple of years ago, I had a comp in Elyria where the 600 square foot house just right next to the highway where they're doing all the construction sold for like 400,000, when everything else sold for like 280. And so I called the real estate agent who sold it, and I was like, why was it that much? And they didn't have a good answer. And so I just told the assessor, like, I would disqualify that. Like, it could be money laundering or who knows what, but there is no basis for that house being 30% more than other houses. Right. The other thing the assessor loves doing, and maybe it's just their software, but it happens. A flipper will buy a house for $350,000, replace everything, new roof, new siding, new windows, new kitchen, new bath, and then they'll sell that house for $550,000. So the 350 sale is like my rental, but the assessor will use the $550,000 comp, even though my house is really the $350,000 comp. And so just pointing that out and using pictures to show that. I have a place in Denver. We've had 5 site visits. Denver won't update their records. That I have like this masonite siding, but they list it as a brick and stucco home. And the last one is common. If you're in an older house, you have a bedroom where a queen bed won't fit, being compared to a newer house, which has like usable size bedrooms and just pretending they're equivalent in value, where the older house is less usable and therefore less valuable.
I think we got one question or two.
Go for it.
Two of them. First one here is, can you request the first step, the June 8th, in person?
No, it's just written, and then the second step would be in person.
And then I have another question on that. So June 8th is not necessarily a hard date for all counties. So we need to be looking at what our assessed value statement says and when that appeal is due, right?
Very good point.
For every county, it's not the same in every county, or it may not be.
Maybe the same, but I wouldn't want you to believe me and be wrong. So check it and be certain. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. The second question here is, in the past, they used to send the comps they used in establishing your assessed value. As much as I like that they are saving money on paper, I cannot find the comps they used on the assessor's website. Any guidance to find the comps they used?
That's actually the second bullet on the top of the page. So when they used to have comps, you would pick apart the comp. Now counties like Jeffco use like bulk valuation techniques and mass statistical analysis. And so they don't give you comps anymore. They just use some AI number that they think your house is worth. And so those comps literally don't exist anymore. But what you have to do is supply your own comps to create your own valuation, which normally would be lower. And if they did give you comps, which Denver still does, Jeffco doesn't, and I think Boulder is kind of moving away from that too. If you did have comps to pick apart, but the second appeal, they will give you their comps. So even if now they don't, when you appeal the second time, they will do a more thorough assessment than what you just got in the mail. You would list that, your house and lot size being different, the location being different, garages, other things, and the condition. And I think the most important advice I can give you is spend the money at Office Depot or whatever on your new printer cartridge. Print full color pictures. Everybody who looks at this stuff is busy, and a picture is worth 1,000 words or hundreds of dollars in tax savings.
Yeah, a neighbor of mine, we have a couple of triplexes on 14th and Josephine area. He actually went on his second appeal with PowerPoint slides, and that was it worked for him. So that's good.
Yeah.
You got to be prepared, it sounds like, for this.
Be visual. Yeah, you got to spend some time on this. Yes. The other thing, so during the Great Recession, as property values were going down, the assessor just used the sale number, and it didn't matter what time during that 2-year basis period it happened. Now they are using this time adjustment formula, which honestly, there's a famous Benjamin Disraeli quote of "There's lies, damn lies, and statistics," and they'll just make up numbers. I actually talked to the Denver assessor's office on Monday, and they said the lowest time adjustment was 29% and the highest was 40%. And I'm like, what's that based off? And he told me it's bulk appraisals and mass assessment based on property class and a given cluster. And it was buzzword bingo, and I could not explain it to get him to explain it to me. And you'll see what you get out of this is, like, I have a duplex in Southeast Denver. Tax assessment went from 464,000 to 936. I think the real value is about 650. So that's a protest.
So Fleming, let me ask you a question. So I saw this on my assessments as well. They have this time adjustment, right? So they're taking a comp then from like mid the year before, like let's say 2020, right?
Yeah.
And time adjusting it to a 2022 Like,
That's right.
didn't they find a better, closer comp?
Maybe, but the time adjustment, I'll show you what happens on the next slide and just how.
Like, how do they come up with that value seems to be so much higher than the actual comp? And then if you're disputing that, if you're finding comps from like May of 2022, which is right before
That's the peak.
right, then providing those as your dispute or your appeal, they wouldn't be able to really argue with that, would they?
Yes, you've hit it on the head. So if you find comps from the end of the basis period, those have more soundness, because otherwise I'll just time adjust them in ways that can be really unrealistic. That's a really great point.
Okay.
Yeah. And just speaking about the time adjustments being just, and all those statistics being highly suspect, Lawrence Yuen, who was the chief economist for the National Association of Realtors, he admitted somewhere around 2016 that during the Great Recession, he was understating the property decline in value by as much as 20%. So he was saying across the US, we had a 30% decline in value when he knew that it was actually 50%. So it's just statistics are highly suspect. And here's the case study I was mentioning to you, Brad. So I purchased a house that sold for $945,000 at the very beginning of the basis period. And then it also sold right after the basis period. So, in September, if it had sold in June, it would have been counted. So it had a very slight increase. You'll see this lower line slope, very slight increase. The assessor made this really steep increase. That's their time adjustment. And they said it was worth $1,150,000. The fact is that house had actually been for sale for $1,050,000 for like almost a year and didn't sell. And the assessor is like, we don't count for sale listings that never get closed. So they just ignore that from their data. And I called and this is why I'm here. I'm doing this presentation for free without really making money of it, because of Cynthia Braddock, the Boulder County assessor, because I feel like there is such a level of disingenuousness and like collecting money, regardless of whether it's owed, that just sticks in my craw.
Yeah.
So she was completely disinterested in a fair valuation. Did the first appeal, they sent me back a letter, like they didn't give me a single dollar off. They're like, no, we're right, you're wrong. And then we had the hearing with the independent arbiter, and it was a young man from the assessor's office. He had just gotten his appraisal's license. He was combative, he was rude, he was flippant, he interrupted me. He wasn't really willing to listen or even give me the floor. But I used this chart, and the independent arbiter about 2 months later mailed the decision setting the valuation at $985K. And so I think the real lesson is, even though the assessor's offices can be really in ethical trouble, there are checks and balances. This is the United States. And so the process is still a lot fairer than if we had the assessor's office without these checks and balances. And this is why we're here to protest.
Jay, we have some questions.
Mike here asks, for the third appeal, as a clarification, do you get a choice of mediation versus board versus court, or is that the county's decision?
No, you get to choose. They have different cost structures. I think they're all really suboptimal. So I've decided to just start folding and not go to the third level. But it's something you have available. I talked to some investor from New Jersey, New Jersey is the highest property tax state in the US. And he just sued the county because he was so mad at them for how unethical they were. But he said his costs of trying to make his point stick were far higher than what he was going to save in property taxes if he won. So that's where I'd urge you to be really kind of just careful. It's a slippery slope where don't get that angry that you can't enjoy your life anymore.
Kelly asks, are all evaluation periods 24 months? I think Weld County is 18 months, but I wanted to make sure I'm understanding it correctly.
I believe this is governed by Colorado state law, and so Weld County hopefully follows state law. Although I heard they were going to secede like a couple of years ago. So I don't know the answer to that, but
It
there
would
is
be,
a state law around this.
and it would be stated in your statement, right? Whatever that assessed value statement is
Sure.
if you're going to appeal, here's your appeal period. It would say,
Yes. Yeah, I really encourage, like, Google assessor's office plus your county name, and they'll have a page explaining all this relatively well, actually, and really make sure you follow their instructions, because I see Boulder, Denver, and Jeffco, where I own properties, being very consistent, but that doesn't mean everybody is. So being in these meetings, protest meetings with the assessor's office, I've heard some crazy stuff, including all realtors are liars and the MLS is more often than not wrong. And this is where I had protested. They had a comp that on their rolls showed 843 square feet, 2-bedroom, 1-bath. And on the MLS, it was a 5-bedroom, 2-bath with 1,900 square feet. And I'm like, yeah, no wonder it sold for 650,000, because it's like 2.5 times my square footage. And they're like, no, the MLS is wrong and realtors lie. But you have to just stand and just kind of ignore some of this. They also told me that because I'm a tax protester, I'm a tax evading liar. And on another property I own this piece of crap in West Denver. It's got like 6-foot ceilings. And literally there's an ANSI appraisal standard that if your ceiling is less than 6 foot 8 inches, the square footage doesn't count. And so I'm like, it does have a portion that has taller ceilings. I'm like, it's a 200 square foot house. And so your 800 square foot comp, it's not a comp. And they're like, you're a liar. And if we go out there and find you're wrong, we're going to tax you even higher than the notice of valuation.
Wow.
So they'll say stuff like that. That's actually illegal for them to threaten.
that sounds so immature.
That too. Thank you for saying that. That's the beauty in you, Brad, to notice that. Thank you.
Hey, just so everybody knows, yes, this webinar is being recorded, and the recording will be available to everybody. So you don't have to take notes like crazy. You can get this all later. We did have a couple others here, Jay. So
sure. Kristen asks, so is it correct that you cannot use any comps after June 30th, 2022 in your protest?
That's correct. Although on that I used that and I showed that graph and it helped me. And I think that independent arbiter could have discarded it and gone with the assessor's opinion and been within the realm of the law, but she was also being fair.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the market has softened a bit, obviously, since
then. If you were in step 1 and you were just providing comps, you wouldn't do that.
You would never provide the comp, but this one was different because it's a property is its own best comp. And since it's sold twice, I felt like it made a really strong case for me.
Right. But you wouldn't have provided that comp in your step 1 process. You would wait until you're in front of somebody to provide that comp.
If it was the neighbor's house that sold after June 30th, I couldn't use it. Like that would be completely irrelevant. Yeah. Exactly. Just out of bounds.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'm sure a lot of people that are not realtors here are asking the same question that Andrew asks here is, where's the best place to find comps if you do not have access to the MLS?
So Jay and I will offer to help people with comps. I don't know that you can get what you need out of Zillow, right, Fleming? Because you may not
really
go back. You may not be able to go back to that time frame, that time period.
Yeah, we'll run comps for you. We're not going to narrow down your value. We'll just send you a list of what we feel would be good comps for you.
Yeah.
But to go through hundreds of properties, if they come, it'd be busy for the next 3 months.
It would be a little onerous for us, but we will certainly offer to run comps for you at least a high level to give you what you need to make your battles, pick your battles.
That's a huge service you guys are offering. I'm really grateful to you both for that. And I think that helps your listeners here so much. I mean, I actually got my real estate license to be able to protest my taxes better because I was so hamstrung about that.
Right on.
Yeah. First time I've heard of that reason for getting your license. I like it.
Yeah. So time savers for protesting. If you did a refi during that basis period, that is fabulous, especially since banks on their appraisals tend to be pretty conservative. Just use that appraisal, send it in, use that value, hope they don't time adjust the crap out of it. And that'll get you a long way. If you bought during the basis period, same thing, that sale is your best comp. If your neighbor has a similar or identical house, if you're in a neighborhood that has that, some of the older Denver neighborhoods do not. But if they got an appraisal or have a sale, use that. And of course, we have Brad and Jay being your friendly agent. So thanks for doing that.
Yep.
And I think when I first started doing this, I was a lot younger and I would just get so angry at just the unfairness. I had bought a place out of, it was condemned for $135,000 and then they're trying to tax it as if it's $700,000. I'm like, it's not worth that. And they should know better. And what I've learned now is we're all more likely to help a nice person. Helping an assessor save face by being like, wow, you know, you have hundreds of thousands of properties to assess. One or two can slip through the cracks, and maybe this one slipped through the cracks, but if you could fix it for me, that would be great. Asking for fairness with kindness goes a long way. The combative approach creates an equal and opposite response of combativeness as well. And my last few like second hearings, I was the only person in a block of time to actually show up. And a Jeffco assessor employee actually sent me a kind email thanking me that I showed up and represented my case fairly. And that one, I got $100,000 reduction in value, so it was worth it. And it's really important as you get towards June, whether it's June 1st or June 8th or whatever your local county has, expect the unexpected. So the weekend before June 1st, last cycle, the Denver assessment site just was down. And the fact is that state law prevents the city from granting extensions, except in very rare cases. So if it had stayed down, I would have just been SOL. And similarly, the Jefferson County assessment protest site, they said they could accept attachments of 10 megabytes. That was not going, those attachments weren't going through. So then I went and printed my stuff at Office Depot and I'm like, oh, I don't have to go to the post office. I'll just mail it there. They weighed it. They got the postage wrong by 20 cents. And so instead of like paying the postage and accepting it, the assessor's office got it sent back. And so I got it back on the last day. So I drove to their office and with traffic, I got there like 8 minutes after the assessor's office closed. So I slid it under their door. And so I got a call on Monday morning that they rejected my submission as being untimely because it was received after close of business.
Gosh.
But then like 2 months later, I got a postcard that they knew they had some kind of problem and that I was invited to resubmit. So I did. And then they called me and said, yeah, yours wasn't covered under that glitch. But then they said there's actually a way to protest afterwards. If you miss the protest this year, you can protest next year under, it's called a petition for abatement. And you could actually file a petition for abatement and now in 2023 for the value they did last cycle. They had told me if I submitted my protest January 3rd or whatever that first business day was, I would be done in 3 months. It actually took them till September to get the hearing and come through with it. So
did they retro your tax bill because of that?
Yes. They sent me like a $584 refund, which is how I knew it was about $100,000 reduction.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, but early birds get more worms.
Right on.
Yeah. And I think in parting, you know, this is a short presentation. I can't tell you everything I've learned in my 150 protests I've done, but this book, it's a quick read. It has quotes from everybody from Rosa Parks to Zig Ziglar in it. It's fun. I try to keep it lighthearted, but it also helps you stand up for yourself against the unfairness we sometimes see government dishing out. And it's $9.99 on Amazon. I make like $2.30 off it, but I highly encourage it. It's a quick read and it'll help you.
Okay, we have a few more questions here. Monet asks, we're in the process of purchasing An 18 unit multi-unit in Arapahoe County is closing after the appeal deadline. Is it possible for a purchaser who has not closed yet to appeal on behalf of the seller, or would the seller need to agree to do this?
Ah,
Good, interesting
that's a
question.
great question. So there is a line on the protest form that you have permission from the owner to protest. So there's something like that. So it's pretty easy if you wanted to protest to get the seller's permission. And I'm sure if they want to sell it, they're going to be easy to work with.
Okay. Jacob asks, is there a minimum delta that you would want to see before you're going through the hassle of protesting?
Great question. I think that's a really valid one. Yes, I think you have to calculate what your time is worth and know that your probability of winning is somewhere in the 50-50 or maybe less range. So be kind to yourself, because you could spend 5, 6, 7 hours on this kind of protest and to make $300 back per year may not be worth your time. What I've found for me, because I own multiple properties, that it gets somewhat formulaic. And if I appeal one, I can kind of use that structure to appeal the next 4 in not that much extra time. I have a bunch of fixed income tenants, and I feel like if I let the government increase taxes as much as they want to, I would have to kick some of those people out to remodel the units and get higher rents to pay the taxes. And I'm really depriving low-income people of living in the city and county of Denver by doing that. And so I have a protest for my tenants, less for me and more for them. But that's a hard decision. And you really have to see like what your cost structure is and how much they overdid it. Sometimes you might get comps from Brad and Jay and be like, wow, like the market really has gone this crazy and there's no good comps. But sometimes I'll see comps that are half. And I'm like, yeah, I'm going to send those in and they'll take something off.
I found a site here recently. It's called propertyiq.com. It's propertyiq.com. They tend to, what I've seen on my rental properties, that they tend to be closer in value than Zillow, Redfin, other ones like that. So, and there's a lot of other useful information on that site for each property you type in. So just offering that for anyone out there. Great.
I wrote that one down. Thank you, Jay.
And then there's a couple other questions here. I'll kind of loop 2 of them together here. Diego says it's the first time he's doing an appeal. Where do we send a written appeal? And then Kristen asks, do we file electronically or mail?
I would do electronically unless you have so many comp MLS pictures in color that the size doesn't fit within their size guidelines. I mean, electronically is just safer. The mail, you never know if it arrives or not. Yeah.
Okay. Are we sharing the slides?
Yeah.
Yep.
Please.
Okay.
Go for it.
Yep. Somebody asked about that. So sounds good. Let's see. From past experience, I found that some comps are described as updated, therefore deserving higher valuation. It's just a comment, I guess.
Yeah, there's that TD 1000 form we fill out at closing. And you know, there's all these games people play with it. Like, is it a Class C property versus a Class A? I think the assessor ignores it just as much as everybody else at closing. So it doesn't affect the valuation much.
All right.
Somebody asked her, the site that I mentioned is called propertyiq.com. I think that's pretty much all the questions that we had here.
Hey, Fleming, are you still sharing your screen?
Yes, I'm going to quit that.
I'll go back to our. So if anybody needs help with comps, et cetera, feel free to reach out to Jay and I. We're at this contact information here, phone numbers. email addresses. Email might be the most efficient way to handle that. So you can email us property addresses and you know, information on the properties as well, so we can run the right comps. That'd be great. But also happy to talk to anybody about any properties that they own. If they're looking to make a move, buying or selling, anything like that, please feel free to reach out to us. If we can help you in any other way with referrals to property management or anything like that, always just reach out and we're happy to help. And if you
Jay and Brad have also been really great with referring like qualified contractors and people who do good work at good prices.
Yep. We just have been doing this for so long and have so many people that we get through actually referrals from some of our other investors and things like that, that we always have a database of folks to help people out. So happy to help anybody in any way that we can. We all do better together. So if we can help you, reach out to us, and we really appreciate everybody joining today and look forward to helping you all. Thank you, Fleming, for that great presentation, and thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, been a pleasure. Thank you, guys. Thank you all for listening in.
Awesome. Take care, guys.
Thank you, everyone.